All right. All right. The day is here. It's not going to be a eulogy, though. To some Oklahoma fans, this might feel like one because ink hasn't hit paper yet. There's a long ways to go, a lot of prospects, but there is no denying, first and foremost, what a big win this is for Missouri. Secondly, there is no denying that this is going to cause a massive pivot from Oklahoma in recruiting. Of course, I'm joined by Jay of Unfair Sports and Jason Watkins of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. I'm already getting tongue-tied. Jay, Jason, let the people know where they can find all of your great content.
Oh, yeah, Todd. Great to be here as usual. Jay Smith, Unfair Sports. Just search for me on YouTube as well as whatever podcasts are downloaded and listen to. We about to have some fun, gentlemen.
Yeah.
And Jason Watkins, Hall of Fame College Football. You can find us at CFB-pod on YouTube, and of course also at hofmedia.us, where you can find me at JW_HOF on Twitter.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. Now, let's start this off. I'm going to give Missouri their flowers, Drinkowitz flowers right now. Oklahoma went into that state last year, and of the top 5 players, I said this in my video today, Oklahoma took 2. You took Caden Green, and you took Adebayor, who is going to be a force for the Sooners. Now, in fairness, Missouri got 3 of the top 10, but none of the top 5. The last thing they could afford, especially in a time where I'm sure we're going to talk about it. I'm not saying Eli's on the hot seat, but I also am saying that seat is warm. And I think everybody would agree with that, right? He needs to be given his time. He needs to be given the opportunity, but if results aren't shown, that seat will get progressively warmer until it is a hot seat. This is big for a coach that could potentially be on the hot seat if this year doesn't go well. Getting in the number 1 player in your state, depending on the service, the number 1 player in the nation, the number 1 player on defense, I think, every service, yes. Williams Nwaneri. Unbelievably versatile in terms of what he can do on the defensive line. I think depending on what you need, he can genuinely play everywhere. Jay, you and I have talked about this extensively. His versatility up front is wild, right? You want him to gain a bit of weight, put him in the strength and conditioning room, add 15, 25 pounds on him. I mean, this dude right here has a bunch of ability. No doubt that this is big for Missouri. The NIL law they just passed has a lot to do with this. We're going to talk about that as well because I find that fascinating, especially in light of what just came out with Texas A&M and the real NIL daddy, which is the IRS, not the NCAA. And we're going to talk about what this means for Oklahoma, but given I have 2 phenomenal content creators for the Oklahoma Sooners, 2 of the most recognizable faces in that fandom, Jay and Jason with me, I want to hear from y'all first. So before we dive too deep into what this means for Missouri, what this means for this, that, and the other, the NIL behind this, talk to us about, first and foremost, what this means for Oklahoma, and then secondly, where does Oklahoma go from here? We've all discussed this in our various recruiting videos. I guess I'll go Jay and then Jason. We'll just go straight down the line to keep it easy.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll discuss this, and we've talked about this in ad nauseum, and so we'll go really dive into it. Now, I'll keep it a buck for everybody. I know that a lot of Sooner fans are upset, sad, depressed, or whatever it is you can be. That's fine. There's no reason to be. This is what happens when you are at high-level recruiting. You win some, you lose some. Ty, you said it eloquently, and I mentioned this in my video as well. We got the top 2 players out of Missouri last year. Williams Nwaneri is their Justin Smith. If you don't know who Justin Smith is, he played football at Missouri in the 90s, got drafted number 4 pick in the NFL draft in 2001. He's one of the generational talents that came through that state, Jefferson City, Missouri. After losing P.J. Adebayor, you got to find a way to get yourself a defensive lineman in state and get him to stay. And so they leveraged that. They leveraged at home. He mentioned it in his interviews and stuff that, you know, he's home. He's staying home. He's staying close to family. That he's very family oriented. Location was a key point on the entire recruiting trail, which is funny how Missouri popped up at the end. But in the beginning, it was when it even talking about Georgia, talking about Tennessee, talking about Oklahoma, Oregon. It was all about distance. And so I say this, and as David Whitehead mentioned here, recruitment's not over. Do I think Oklahoma will flip him? I don't know yet. We will see. But I will say this. The recruitment's not over. The anticipation is that Nwaneri's going to do visits, OVs, throughout the season, and somebody may entice him to go ahead and leave. And so what this means for Oklahoma is that you just change your focus. You continue to go after McKinley. You continue to go after Nigel Smith. You continue to go after David Stone. You go after Zena Umezu. You go after him even more now. You could probably even throw in Edric Houston, in which I know that they've been keeping communication with him. But Edric Houston's another 5-star that actually liked coming to Oklahoma. He enjoyed his visit. So you just continue to go after who you can. Luckily, this class is full of defensive linemen, all the way from 5-star to 3-star, that are actually really good and competitive. So all we're gonna do is keep doing what we do. Is keep going after them. Bates and Chavis are really working hard on changing the perspective of Oklahoma from the last regime. Like, defensive line wasn't a focus. We're looking for guys that are going to be 300 pounds plus. We've finally got 6 of them now in comparison to the one we had last season. We're pushing for bigger dudes. And so because of that, it's going to take time for us to be able to get families to trust that Oklahoma does have them in their best interest, even though the track record at Clemson is nice. Now, the last one is Missouri. Missouri's smart. They try to leverage this as a way to keep themselves afloat. Drinking them, they're on the hot seat. I don't care what anybody says. The last coach before him, Barry Odom, went 8-5 and then went 6-6 and got fired. And he was there 4 years. Drink's on his 3rd year. He's yet to have a winning season. This is his year. He has to do it. And I promise you, they lose to Middle Tennessee State like Miami did last year, there's a good chance that he might get fired. So keep that in mind. It's tough. Recruiting is hard, but we've all learned that nothing matters until they sign on the line, which is dotted. Even as Sooner fans, we had Colton Vasek. He flipped. Just remember that because of proximity. It happens. So make sure you keep that in mind. But we did get PJ last year, which he's a 5-star plus. And if you go watch the highlights on Twitter from some of the insiders and the reporters, he's looking big. Jason, what you got?
I would also say that, I mean, we're seeing a lot of it in the chat there, though, too. I mean, aside from Sooner Cowboys doom and gloom, you're seeing that we got time. You know, you're still 5 months away from early signing day. And something that I've been, saying to my audience in our Discord a lot is that, and it's something I think we've talked about on your show and mine as well, is that they got to go out there and prove it on the field this year a little bit too. You're getting in the room now. You're getting some of these guys they want to go there. I think that we've talked about this before. The fact that you have the relationship recruiting is important, and they're not just doing it on money. So that was the other thing. I think that the Missouri's law where they had, and I think you were alluding to that a few minutes ago, Ty, when you were talking about, they're able to start paying him like as soon as September, right? So
no. I read the law.
No,
I read the law. They can't sign. You can't pay them until they actually sign. So what it means is that if they sign early signing day in December, they can start paying them in January, but they can't pay them in September. I went through the law of it. They have to be signed to the school.
Somebody was saying, I was reading it. I think I was reading it on 247 that it might have been like that, but it could be. It could have been. Wrong. But anyway,
gentlemen, I could be wrong on this, but I believe there is a loophole. He has to be signed. But I don't believe that the verbiage of national letter of intent is in there. I believe that it's open for even a financial aid agreement, at which point he could sign that tomorrow. Right. I think as long as there is a signed document to that school, including a financial aid agreement, he is eligible to start getting paid. At the very least, that's what On3 reported a few days ago.
Right,
whenever the law
that's
broke.
the loophole that everyone's talking about, because I was looking through the law. I ain't synced it in there. But
if he signs his financial aid agreement, I believe he can start being compensated.
Mm-hmm. That's as I said. I mean, even whether or not that's the case, if that is the case, that's just another reason for it. But I'm going to tell you what I saw looking at the video. I saw a kid that didn't look very happy to me. He didn't look very happy to me. It didn't look like it was a decision that he wanted to make. I think that having his friends that are already at Oklahoma or are committed to go to Oklahoma at some point, I think that that's something that he's wanted all the way. I mean, everything we've heard from everybody up until the last few days has had him going to Oklahoma. Now, there's also some things that you could take as negative if you want to. in the end, I still feel like this is a situation where I think last year it probably worked in their favor that they were that bad on defense and didn't have the greatest record in the world, because you got some of those guys that thought, hey, we're going to have an opportunity to go in there and start today, day one. You know, I think this year you're going to probably have to prove a little bit on the field. You go out there and you get 10 wins, you could possibly flip this guy. But the other thing I would tell everybody is that I know he's the number one guy. He's the guy that's ranked number one. I would say that Stoney is probably the more important of these defensive lineman recruits because of the fact of where he's from, that it should be that lock, right? If Nwaneri ended up at Missouri because he's from Missouri and it was one of those type of deals for him, then you would hope that you can do the same thing for if you're at Oklahoma. Be able to get this guy. Sorry about that, guys. Did it cut me off?
No, we hear you.
Oh, okay. No, sorry about that. No, I would feel like it'd be the same thing. Proximity is another deal. And, you know, he's always wearing Oklahoma's gear. He's always throwing the horns down. He's always doing stuff like that. This kid, here's the thing that I would say about that. You don't have Jaden Jackson without Stone, right? I mean, they're the IMG brothers. Right? They play next to each other right now on that line. I don't know that you end up having, and Jaden's already committed, right? Would he have committed not thinking that he was going to be able to, you know, to play next to David Stone? I don't know that. It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it. So to me, and it seemed like he kind of, you know, when he took his visit to Texas, and what did Stoney say? Stoney was giving him a hard time right there on Twitter, you know, that this ain't it, he said. You know, this ain't it. So in any way you want to look at it, you can do whatever you want, you know, and you can feel the way that you want about it if you want to doom and gloom this thing all day long. But in the end, if they go out there and they put the product on the field that it looks like to us they should put on the field this year, and they're not in the SEC yet, folks. They're not in the SEC yet. They got to go win the Big 12, or they got to go win 10 games in the Big 12. And then you're heading into the SEC. These guys you're getting a recruiting bump from that already. We all know that. We all see that. They're getting into living rooms that they weren't getting into before. Now they need to show that they can do what they did at Clemson, which really the huge recruiting classes came after they were able to take some of those guys that were underrated, slip through the cracks when it came to some of that kind of stuff. They went out there and put the product on the field after you win a national championship in 2016, and then you got that 2018 class. Everybody go look at the 2018 class. And look, I understand that everybody's timeline is today, right now, go get it done. You know, you want to fill the whole freaking cupboard up today, and then you don't have to recruit anybody forever after that. This is just not, I mean, it's not realistic. And you got to look at it in terms of, you know, if they get 3 of the guys that are out there, or even 2 more of them with Jaden Jackson, you have the foundation for a championship defense. That's all I could say about it.
So here's what I will say. Johnny, you made a comment a bit ago about how Stone is very good, very important, Nigel Smith very talented, but that Nwaneri could be just so key to this OU class because of the versatility. I agree with you there. I also think there is something to Jason, what you said about if proximity is such a big thing, and this will happen in recruiting, where proximity can be a massive deciding factor for Williams Nwaneri. Hopefully it will be the same for a David Stone. That's completely true. And we've talked about this at length, where David Stone has been the guy that so many in the Oklahoma fan base, even going back a year from where we sit right now, we're saying that's the guy we need in this class. So that's not exactly a new take. But one thing that is interesting here is there's this like vicious cycle, right? Where Oklahoma, under the previous coaching staff, very good, right? They would have great seasons, but defense just wasn't the calling card. It just wasn't. Offense was spectacular. I mean, it was best offenses in college football. There's now this interesting cycle where Brent Venables and company was brought into Oklahoma to change that cycle, yet he's having to do that with the pieces he was left, and that wasn't exactly a great defense that he was left with, right? So he takes over a program where a lot of people ended up leaving, not the talent he needs for his scheme. I like what you said, Jason, about how they're going to have to win on the field. I don't know what Oklahoma's defense will be ranked this year. But the one thing you need it to be is improving, and like vastly improving, right? It's one of those things where as long as it's vastly improving week to week and people are understanding the scheme, we can talk about this wheel being broken. But that is an interesting thing right now for Oklahoma, because, and I'm sure we'll dive more into this, the thing that stood out to me, and Jay and I were talking about this in the green room, is that he said he picked Missouri over Georgia. He didn't say he picked Missouri over Oklahoma. He said he picked Missouri over Georgia. We know it
different ways. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think we could, but at the same time, we know what Georgia has done on the defensive line. Missouri is here because they have the advantage of being the home school, right? And the NIL law that has just passed. Tennessee on the up and up. I'm interested to see what Oklahoma does on the football field this year defensively, because I think if they go out there and if they're able to improve, that's going to help their pitches in these battles, because it is very tough for anybody, let alone a team that's trying to completely turn around their defense, to pitch against Alabama or Georgia, right? Like teams that just say, oh yeah, we sleepwalk into a top 25 defense because they've been set up for multiple years now. Even though Georgia just changed from Mark Richt to Kirby not that long ago, it's not like they were struggling under Mark Richt, guys. You know what I mean? Like when Mark Richt was fired, there were some people that actually put their eyebrows up like, wait, y'all are firing him?
They have 10 wins a year, and yeah.
So those are programs that are well established. Jay, passing it back to you.
Yeah, no, it's tough for it's recruiting is hard. And we love the highs and we hate the lows. And I try to remind people all the time that there's no definitives in it. I mean, everyone's upset that NIL is making it so bad, but it's funny because it seems like these smaller schools are putting all their eggs in like one or two baskets, and they're winning players. I mean, we've watched players flip from all kinds of institutions. I've seen them go from Georgia and Bama and Florida State, and it's just they're going all over the place, and they're checking out new players. Hell, remember early signing day, how much fun that was, Sooner fans? Oregon fans weren't very happy. You had Peyton Bowen flip. Miami fans weren't happy because Cormani McClain went ghost, and then all of a sudden they ended up with, him being in Colorado. So, yeah, it's all over the place with recruiting, and it's just right now we're so vested in it more than we used to be, that you're just seeing it a lot more on the surface now, especially with NIL. You have the capabilities, but a lot of these schools are throwing every dime they have at certain players they can try to get. And depending on who you talk about, like Sooner Cal was talking about, PJ was a 5-star, but was he heavily pursued? Yeah, yes, he was. Like, what are we talking about?
Thing to say. It's such a weird thing to say.
Like, right.
Number 4 recruit in the country. No, nobody wanted him. Just
yeah. Yeah, nobody wanted. Yeah, PJ was just random, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Come on, bro.
It's not hard. I mean, Williams Nwaneri decided to stay home, and that's what happens sometimes. I mean, you saw that with Hicks. You've seen it with other players. I mean, the Sammy Brown recruitment. The biggest thing with him is that he went to Clemson all the time. They felt like more like home for him than anywhere else. You see that a lot with a lot of the top players. In some places, the money's going to be there. Everybody's going to match each other. I promise you, Oklahoma matched everything that Missouri was offering. I promise you.
Yeah.
Family decided they want to stay close to home. Just is what it is.
I don't think that the money that's why I kept saying, in our little group chat that we had going on, Jay, that I don't think that it had to do with the money that much. I really don't. I think that this was a family decision. His mother decided that he wasn't going anywhere. Again, read his body language. He didn't look like a happy kid to me. He didn't. But that's, look, some families, they have more pull over their kids than others, and you don't know what's going to. And look, if Drink gets fired after this season, I mean, he very well could leave, and he could get flipped. And nobody, for all the same doom and gloomers that are in here right now saying all this kind of stuff. If you think about it, last year, what were you saying whenever Bowen was, all summer and the entire season, he was committed to Notre Dame, and he wasn't coming off of that commitment. And everybody kept saying, no, it's not going to. And then he flips to Oregon and everybody freaks the crap out. And then what happens the next morning? He flips. I mean, he never sent the paperwork into Oregon. It was all just so that he could get what he, and this was another family situation when, if you think about it, right? That's all that was. It's the same kind of stuff. But these kids are not, they don't owe Oklahoma a damn thing.
Here's the one area I will push back.
Oklahoma nothing.
He had a commitment video ready, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that this was something to where he was unpleased to commit to Missouri, right? I think that this is that was just one of the things where, I mean, those are big moments, man. I'd be shaking if I was him, so nervous. So I don't think that he wasn't happy to stay home. I just think that it's one of those, it's one of the biggest moments of your life. All eyes around college football are on you, because he did have a video made, and I haven't watched it all the way through, but it's very family centric from the part I did see. So it seems like he is very happy, at least thus far, with the decision with Missouri.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like in the end, no matter what, you're going to get who you're supposed to get. If he's not supposed to be at Oklahoma, then you don't want him there anyway. If that's not where he wants to be, why would you even want him to make that decision? Right? If that's where he wants to be is at Mizzou, then okay. I would tell you that, you know, it's a lot easier to scheme for one guy, just like, you know, Nigel Smith said that on my show just 2 weeks ago. It's a lot easier to scheme if you're one guy. You need to go where you got multiple guys that are important. And I think that this entire class understands that, right? That's why they all hang around together whenever they're at the same functions at OU. They talk to each other a lot. You see them going back and forth with each other on Twitter all the time. This is not the end of the world. This is not the end of the world. And from everything I know that you've heard some of the same stuff. I haven't heard anything good about LSU and McKinley. In fact, everything that I've heard about it has been that his mom is not on LSU at all. It's either Texas or OU. And look, there is a number that I think that you probably got too many for them all to come. So was Okoye in the box if Williams Nwaneri was coming and he thinks already that David Stone is? Maybe not, right? But if Nwaneri is now committed to go to Mizzou, that may open it back up for Danny Okoye. It may open it up even more so for McKinley. Some of the other guys that you just brought up, Edric Houston, some of these other guys, look, he's not the only kid out there. Yes, I know he's great, and he's the #1 rated guy. But you have to have patience in this thing. You have to. And it's not, and I can guarantee you that Coach Venables and Coach Bates aren't over there crying in their freaking milk right. They're just not going to do it. They're going to get out there and they're going to coach their team, which is what you really have to do anyway.
I mean, Ty, of all people, Ty can definitely attest to this. I mean, last year's #2 edge in the class was committed to a school for most of the year, and then all of a sudden flipped.
#1 edge in the class.
Well, correction. #1 edge, #2 player in the class. #2 player in the country. He flipped after what? It was a few months, wasn't it? He was actually most of the season.
Yeah, a lot of the time, Keon Keeley was committed to Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a really interesting class last year. A lot of very talented players that ended up elsewhere. And so, look, until pen hits paper, there's nothing. Now, Johnny, you were saying up here that we were saying that it was like a lock that Nwaneri would go to OU. I certainly said I thought Nwaneri would go to Oklahoma, but one thing I'm very consistent in is it's not over until the paper hits. So I don't think you're going to find a clip of me saying it's done anytime ever, because that's never been my approach for any battle. Even the guys that Alabama will land, Jay and Chris, who's not here this evening, will famously push back on me when I'm like, oh, well, this team could flip him. And they're like, Ty, it's Alabama. So I'm very adamant. It's never over until ink hits paper for anybody.
Yeah.
I did think OU led. I will eat crow there. No doubt about it. I'll eat crow on that.
Ty's probably the most consistent when it comes to that. Not to toot your horn too much on that, but you will quickly say, well, you don't know yet. We don't know, but, and just like me, as a fan, I read tea leaves. I look at the activity of the kid and see if I can put it together. I eat crow too. I said, the way everything was going, it looked like he was coming to Oklahoma. And even talking to, former teammates and such, sound like they all were confident too. Didn't happen. So I'm like, well, I guess the tea leaves I was reading was the wrong ones. It happens. Whoop-de-doo, is recruiting. This is what's going to happen. And that's why I mentioned Keon Keeley. He was at, in his whole recruiting, he was Notre Dame for the entire year. Peyton Bowen was committed to Notre Dame January 1
calendar year
2022 and flipped on early signing day so he can enroll early. We never know until, like I said, pen hits paper, and if the kid really feels like, you know what, this is where I want to be. It just, you never know. So I'll gladly eat crow too. I didn't say that it was a definitive. I just said that I felt like it was going to be us. I just felt like it just made sense.
I think we all did. Many factors. I think that was also the thing that everybody was saying around all the insiders were saying the same thing. I mean, Parker and Brandon were saying the same thing up until today. You know, they were all saying the same thing. You know,
Ty, point this one, Johnny Thompson, OU, the brand is broken for elite players.
Yeah, please do.
Defensive players, for most part, they're one every now and then.
But that's why they brought in BV, man.
That's the reason why we have a whole new regime. I guess that's the thing that baffles me about a lot of Sooner fans when it comes to all of this is, do people not realize we have a new regime for a reason? Like the whole reason why this whole new staff is coming in, we're changing all of that. But the other thing, Jason said it perfectly, we still got to show the results so that people feel like it's changed. And we will. This season, you'll see a different defense. They're bigger.
The guys that are in high school, but look at what they did in the portal. They went and got guys that have shown they can play. They already have. They're
former players. Teddy Lineman, as well as Gabe from the Oklahoma Breakdown, they've been spending time at practices. Rocky Kalmus was there recently. Teddy Lineman was there with them. And the one thing Teddy has said every time I listen to him talk, when he sees a defense, he's like, they look a hell of a lot bigger than they were last year. That was one. He's like, two, they look like us back in the early 2000s when he played. And we had some really good BV defenses, some nasty ones. He praises how the size, he said they look different. They look bigger. They look like a different branch, a breed of player. Reminds him of his days playing for BV. So until we show those results, I mean, we're going to whiff here or there, but I don't think that we're going to miss on all the defensive league. We got PJ last year. We're getting 4 and 5. We're getting blue chip defensive players. We just now got to get it on the field and let it show. And we will. It's just, it takes time. Like, I don't get, we're changing the staff for a reason.
Trying to sell you anything, bro. Nobody cares. Nobody's trying to sell anything to you, bro. They're just not. Look, it's so crazy. So crazy.
This is what we'll say, because Johnny says BV is 6-7, but here's the thing. He was 6-7 with a team that was not built for defense. He was 6-7 with a team built for the speed defense, which, if we're talking schematics, is the polar opposite of what he wants to do. Now, that's a whole big rabbit hole for me to jump down. We're not going to do that right now, but that's the whole reason why they brought in Brent Venables, is because he is a defensive mind that was highly praised in college football, and he's familiar with the Oklahoma program. He knows how to recruit the SEC landscape because at Clemson he had to so often. So it's still going to be interesting to see. But at the end of the day, this is a massive win for Eli Drinkowitz, for Missouri. Good for Williams Nwaneri. I think he is going to be an absolute cornerstone for that defense. I think he is spectacularly talented, and they might get Ryan Wingo, right? So that's something we have to talk about. But guys, before we move on to the top 25 list, there was a topic I wanted to get into, and I don't think there's a better person to have joined us at this time for it. There's a new NIL daddy in town. And unfortunately, it's the IRS. The 12 Plus Foundation had to shut down because IRS guidelines basically was like, look, if you're not going to be doing things on the up and up, we're going to have problems. Now, what's important to note is that the IRS had previously approved their nonprofit status. But it was when the IRS doubled back and was like, wait a second, what is happening here? That's when the 12th Man Plus Foundation found themselves in a little bit of hot water. So let's talk about what we know and what we don't know. What we know is that A&M is going to pivot. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, A&M NIL is done, that's not going to be the case. They will pivot. They have too much money to not pivot, and they've been far too aggressive in the NIL landscape. So they're going to pivot. What we don't know is what that pivot is going to look like. And the second thing we don't know, what does this mean for other NIL collectives around the nation? Because the law that Texas passed, guys, interestingly enough, is very akin to a law that Missouri just passed. Now, the difference is Texas will not allow high school athletes to get compensated at all. But the similarities within the law was stating that this law is exempt from NCAA oversight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the IRS just came in and said, well, we're not the NCAA, so open up. What does this look like for college football as a whole? Jay, I want to start with you.
In looking through a lot of that, didn't that have something to do with their 501c3 status also?
Yes, which was granted by the IRS, but it's because, and I don't know the exact verbiage in here. Chris, you can correct me where I'm wrong because there's going to be plenty of places. It's something that if you're actively spending money on recruits, then you're doing that for an improvement. And if you're doing that, there's a direct correlation. And then stuff with the tax exemptions. There was a lot. I think the majority of it revolved around the tax exemption status with donations for the donors. But there was also like the way you're using these donations calls into question nonprofit status, even after we talk about tax exempt status from the donors. Sorry, long-winded.
No, you're fine. And that was the reason why I asked that, because I wanted some clarification, because the way that I was reading it is exactly kind of how you mentioned it. It has something to do with their tax exempt status and they're receiving donations, because what they were doing, which was a loophole that they tried to bring in that was striked down by the Trump administration back in I think it was 2021. No, it was 2018, 17 or 18 when that tax law went through. And basically they eliminated the ability to write off donations to schools. Because what you used to could do is you could donate to the school, get tickets, and write that off on your taxes. Well, they eliminate that tax law. I remember seeing it. I was like, dang, I can't donate to my favorite universities anymore and, get on the ticket list anymore. But because of that was what made me jump on and look at this like, wow. So they're eliminating the ability to write that off. And so this NIL collective was like, hey, we're a 501c3. If you donate to us, technically you can write it off because it's a charitable organization. They got busted for doing that. It's like, nah, man, y'all can't be doing no loopholes. We're not going to allow that mess. You can't just get around paying taxes or saying you're writing off your taxes too, because you're basically compensating players for appearances. That's exactly what I was reading through it. And it's like, yeah, y'all stepped over the line. They were being habitual line steppers. Like there's a line to being able to, do this collective stuff. But when you try to get that additional benefit, you give them an inch, they try to take a mile. And that's exactly, to me, what happened. And that's going to hurt a lot of other collectives, too, because there's a lot of them out there that are 501c3s that use that money that they get donated to them to help other charities. And they leverage the players to do that. They're basically like a entertainment agent, I guess you could say, like an agent for these other charities. That's going to be gone if they don't stop playing around with the IRS's money. They don't play. They're the only ones that they don't play like that.
No.
Chris, what are you thinking about this, man?
To be honest with you, so I'm looking at it like this from two standpoints. First off, I think that the problem for Texas A&M and the problem a lot of other states and NIL collectives will face is simply their characterization of NIL as far as the 501(c), whatever, how that
C3,
yeah. So the whole thing about it is that somebody, whether it's your director of compliance that is the one who's responsible for researching this and telling everybody they got to go, or the people who are over the NIL collective, somebody was giving a lot of misrepresented information to these donors and to these other people or whatever, the higher ups who are responsible for this. So that's something that falls on administration. So you have to go back, because honestly, let's just be real. They can pass all the NIL laws that they want to deflect and to try to keep as much heat off of this university as they want. but we all know Uncle Sam is going to climb into your pockets regardless. So it doesn't really matter. Then on the other side of it, I think if you're Texas A&M, blow it up. Look, let's just say, like, let's look at the NBA. Let's look at the NFL. These are nonprofit organizations that are worth billions and billions of dollars. Why are we not looking at this? Why can't I do that? You know? And you're saying that they get to pay these players and take escrow and all the rest of that stuff from them, as we talked about on your show and other shows in past, when you look at like the breakdown of their contracts and stuff. But what I'm saying is simply just right here. By nature, you would think that the very thing that they're doing, it has already been done, and it's a precedent that's been set by these other powerful organizations. I'm not talking about teams, and I know I'm talking about professional teams, but let's be real. What have we done with the whole pay to play? We basically monetized and professionalized college sports in a sense. And so the whole thing is that if you're Texas A&M, you're saying that, hey, here's the precedent. This has been done for years. Why are we being dinged for this? But it goes back to my point that I think I made on the SEC Connect. Shout out to the SEC Connect, Stephen. You know, all the boys is on there. But anyways, what I was going to say is it goes back to my point of that. It's just, how do you, knowing that this NIL is still in its kind of its early era or whatnot, or its early conception, how do you get to the point where you think it's okay to say, yeah, I'm going to donate all this money to this NIL collective that's paying players to play, and that's not going to be looked at and be heavily scrutinized? So, like I said, I think the blame falls somewhere on Texas A&M because they gave a lot of people a lot of the wrong information. And I think it's just that. And I think that they have nobody to blame but themselves because they thought that they could pull a fast one, but they couldn't. But like Ty said, at some point they'll find a loophole.
Yeah, Jason, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I kind of think the same thing. And I mean, you heard about it pretty much from immediately as soon as they started paying these kids with the NIL stuff, that the A&M used it as a green light to just go crazy with it. You know, they dumped $30 million, $30 million. And, you know, I don't care how much Jimbo wants to stand around and scream, you know, slice bread. We all knew that was the case. We all knew that was the case. That was, you know, and he sat there and acted like they weren't doing it. And it wasn't even against the rules at that point. Right. But obviously, you know, it just goes to show you how crazy it was. I mean, why would you even try to go down that road? I mean, knowing that you're not going to be able to get away with that. I don't know what happens from here on. It sounds to me like they're probably going to figure it out, and they got enough money to figure it out. You know what I mean? In the end, you know, this is if you go back, this really has a lot to do with the fact that this has been a freaking cluster for years, decades even. You know, the NCAA they've been making millions off of these kids for all this time. Mm-hmm. They waited until, and Ty, you've talked about this. They waited until Kavanaugh raked them over the coals and told them, we're going to kill you if you don't freaking do this. Right. Yeah. And now it's just reactive. It's still the Wild West. And what that was their reaction to it was to just, okay, well, we'll just toss NIL out there. They can just go and make money this way. And then we'll have to figure it out as we go. Well, if that's the way it's going to be, this is why you need to break away. If you're college football, for sure, you need to have a real governing body here somewhere to where, and the states, I mean, this is now all the states are getting involved. It makes it even harder really to control any of this stuff. And it's not that I want to see these kids not get paid. I want them to get paid. They should have been getting paid for decades. You know, the thing is that the impropriety, now you just open it's like a green light to just do things crazy. Right. And, you know, it is what it is. But, and then there's really no protection at this point for any of these kids. How many of us have heard about the whole deal with Jordan Addison? He goes to USC, supposed to get $2 million. He gets $250,000. Right. That's why he didn't play in the Cotton Bowl. We've heard the same thing about, well, hey, we talked about it with Florida. You know, they were supposed to get all that money that was supposed to go to Jaden Rashada, $10 million, and they just back out of it and don't have to do it. You know, Look, I understand that there was reasons why Billy didn't want to do that. I get it. In the end, they needed to make it to where the coaches had some kind of control over that. I think that had a lot to do with Oklahoma's legislature right? The legislation that they passed is, you're starting to see these things, but everything's going to be reactive until they get it right.
Yeah.
You know?
And if I can just jump back in, I'll say again, I think the main issue, and somebody was going to make the mistake, albeit Texas A&M, right? So with that being said, again, it's a characterization of the 501(c)(3) of the nonprofit status of the tax exempt. It was a characterization of their NIL collective. That simply was a mistake. On the flip side of that, if you want to take the only positive out of this is that you're keeping the NCAA, because of the legislation that you passed, you're keeping the NCAA out of your hair. So you're able to go ahead and say, okay, well, somebody's got to pay this, we got to pay this, whatever the case may be. But you don't have to sit there and fool with, investigations from the NCAA that can potentially take away scholarships or whatever the case may be. You're only dealing with the IRS, and you're being audited for so long, So that's kind of the only kind of positive that you can really take from this, is that it gives you time to kind of regroup and hopefully be able to keep those donors that were already donating all that money, hopefully be able to keep them at bay and say, hey, we're going to figure this out so we can keep you on board for everything. Because I think that is the only, for me, I think if I was a Texas A&M fan, I think that'd be the first thing I would be thinking is how many of these donors can we actually keep to keep this money coming in.
Yeah, I think the one thing that was I saw whenever the news broke about the 12th Man Plus Foundation, you go on Twitter and you see everybody saying Texas A&M NIL is dead, it's done, it's over, buried. And I'm sitting there, I was like, guys, in the statement, they're even saying they're going to contact the donors and figure out a way to do this. Now, I found it more funny that, like Chris, we were talking about on the SEC Connect, the fact that they're going to have to contact a bunch of millionaires and billionaires of, hey, we messed up how we were investing your money and the classification of it. We're going to have to pivot, but just keep sending us that's going to, if I could be a wallflower for those conversations, those would be fantastic.
But in a dark room, a dark bathroom time. Hey, I'm sorry.
sorry. I know you gave us $3 million, but I messed up. Right, like the Hangover, the entrance. Hey, Tracy, we messed up. Yeah. So look, this is going to be interesting. Now, I am really interested to see if this affects anybody else's NIL, because I know that Texas A&M was doing things a little bit different, but there are so many collectives that were structuring themselves similarly to how Texas A&M's 12th Man Plus Foundation was structured. Whenever that was announced, that was heralded as maybe the next wave of NIL. And the reason why I pose this question, everything new right now is going to be quote unquote the standard until legislation decides whether or not it's legal or not. Right. But but I mean, it's one of those things where if someone does something, you don't want to get left behind. Right. So if you can match it, but we don't even know if it's legal or not. So I'm interested to see if any other NIL collectives, do you think there'll be any other ones touched by this, or it'll be business as usual?
I think some of them are going to be touched. Don't get me wrong. I think some people are going to be dinged, but it may not have the spotlight that Texas A&M had. I think right now, if you're NIL collectives, you're trying to do things internally as far as changing your rules or your approach to the whole issue, because we're out of session right now. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be any bills passed. So you may be stuck with this type of, you may be stuck with your legislation or your rules or however you're doing your NIL collectives for quite some time. So, that's kind of the only, really downfall. So they have to really internalize, their procedures or whatnot. It's a bunch of memos that are going out right now that I would love to see just how people are reacting to this.
Yeah, I don't think that very many other organizations are gonna get dinged for this. And I say it for this reason, kind of just as exactly what Chris was saying. I think a lot of them are actually doing stuff internally to make sure they're not on the radar. Yeah. But at the same time, the only reason why this Texas A&M one jumped out on the radar is because they decided to dissolve it. And I think it's because they were probably doing some crooked stuff. They got busted for doing what they weren't supposed to do. Everybody else is like, oh, so y'all don't want us to do that? Okay, let's scale this back and make it look a little cleaner. They're not going to walk in there and be habitual line steppers and do stuff that they know good and well they're going to get caught doing. I think that's why A&M's is popping out so much, is because their collective was getting so big. Because seriously, if you find an opportunity to put millions of dollars into the school that you love, and you can write it off on your taxes, yeah, they're going to take advantage of that. And too many people probably jumped into it too early. It's kind of like when you find out there's any video gamers out there, if you find out there's a glitch in a game and you start exploiting it, and then everybody starts exploiting it, and within a week later, a patch is put in to stop you from stealing, that's basically what the IRS did there. They recognize that, oh, yeah, no, wait a minute, there's too many of y'all taking advantage of this. Shut it down. And that's the reason why they went ahead and patched that bad boy up.
How many of you did the unlimited weapon glitch in Grand Theft Auto? Don't you lie to me.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, don't you lie to me.
Oh, boy, every time I'm exploiting glitches in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom as we speak. So every week they find a new one. I'm just getting passionate. I'm trying to get myself on it. So yeah, it's a common deal.
To all you boys out there who are who use glitches, who do the glitch schemes or the glitch plays in Madden, screw you.
No, right there. That's my point. Is that when too many people do it, they gotta patch it because it's like, nah, that's not even cool. That's not fair.
You don't like when they shift out of the bunch set and glitch up your defensive end driver?
That or they run pinch zero all freaking game, and you're like, all right, okay.
It was like back on Tecmo Bowl when you got Bo Jackson, you just couldn't tackle him. You just run that one play, and you could run circles around the field for like the
zigzag,
whole
baby. Zigzag, you gone, baby.
Yeah, man.
But I think about it. New games, you have the ability to patch the glitch, and that is what happened with this NIL at Texas A&M. They got stupid greedy last year. I bet you they wrote off a good like $50 million, and they've IRS looks like, whoa, y'all donating to what? We've got to look this up.
I'm gonna say it if nobody else is gonna say it. This is karma. This is karma for Texas A&M. Johnny got away with way too much. He got away with way too much.
If you're not watching that. Yeah.
Hey, I ain't mad at him, but he got away with way too much. Hey, if I may, Ty, can I tell you my only beef with that documentary?
Go ahead.
My only beef with that documentary is with his dad. I don't believe the blame for Johnny spiraling out of control, especially at least at Texas A&M, it's not on the coaches. You're the dad. You're the constant force in his life. I know you're not there with him 25/7.
He took zero responsibility for any of that shit, right?
It's not Sumlin. Yeah, it's not Sumlin and Cliff Kingsbury, somebody who's single, notoriously single, and does his thing. It's not their job to keep your kid out of trouble. Like at some point he's got to take responsibility himself, but you have to as well. That was my only gripe with the documentary, was like, that was a stupid comment. Like you knew this, but you did nothing about it, But albeit, I'll say this right here. I hope Johnny is, mentally, I hope he's doing fine. Like, I hope he's doing great. But it was a damn good documentary. But again, that was my only gripe about it. Nothing else. All the rest of it, I was like, well, damn. He's Jamarcus Russell 2.0. None of them watch film. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's a good point. God, that Johnny, I didn't watch it for particular personal reasons, because I had a feeling that was going to be a lot of mess. And as I'm seeing everybody talk about it, it was everything I expected out of it. He was a fraud. He never studied. He didn't even try. He was just so uberly talented.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did hear somebody say, and granted, I understand why it was done this way, but he's talking about the slant of how it was produced. It was like, man, you would have thought that Johnny did everything by himself, except for the other 6 NFL draft picks out there, including a wide receiver by the name of Mike Evans. But it felt like he was by himself. And I was like, yeah, but it's his documentary, so it makes sense for it to be slanted toward him. But I know what's probably came through there. There ain't no reason for me to even lie. But the funny thing that jumped out to me was the fact that everybody's saying, wait, he wasn't rich. His friend made it up. Yeah. His friend made up the story. Hey, man, that's the greatest wingman ever. I want y'all to clip this. That
had
dude
money,
there,
but they didn't have that kind of generational money they were talking about. Like he could private jets and all that other crap.
cool.
You know,
But that friend is the reply guy in all of the tweets underneath girls saying, thanks, bro, for letting me borrow that Lamborghini. I appreciate that. Hey, boss, thank you so much for loaning me $300,000 to pay off my bills. His boy is the reply guy on, well, X now, which is hilarious to think in real life that they actually made that work.
Yeah.
Gots to give him props for that.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
The original get back guy.
He's making sure his guy's good.
The wingman, baby.
Gotta
Right,
have.
you get the next topic. You have the next
gotta
great
love
topic
that.
to go.
Guys, we're winding down. We got to talk about AP top 25 list drops. Let's talk about what stands out, because I don't think there's too much surprising here. Georgia coming in at number 1. Look, I know it's a new college football season. They won the championship last year. I have always been of the mindset, if you win the national championship, even if you replace a lot, if you come in at number 1, you're not going to hear me ask a question. Even if they're like, okay, well, what are they going to do about this, that, and the other? They've recruited really, really well. They have a really, really good coaching staff. They've won back-to-back national championships.
Yeah,
number 1, that's theirs. Yeah, no issues here. Michigan at number 2. Look, I'm not mad at that, especially when you look at what they return, right? One of the big questions we have for in Alabama, even a Georgia, who I do believe should be number 1, but one of the big questions that Michigan doesn't suffer from, that Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State all suffer from, who's the quarterback? Right? And we know for a fact who the quarterback at Michigan is. He's been there, he's played there, and they return a really good running back room, very talented team. Number 3, Ohio State. I think that's completely logical, right? They were in the playoffs. They do replace a quarterback, but they're still going to be a very talented team. Jay, you seemed like you might have a little bit of pushback at Ohio State at 3. What do you think?
So Georgia makes sense because in order to beat a man, you got to beat the man. You know, the good old Ric Flair statement. We talked about this on Friday. I totally get Georgia at number 1. Because they won 2 back-to-back titles. I don't even care that they even have that they don't even have a quarterback yet. I don't even care about that. I'm just going to benefit of the doubt because they deserved it. They won it 2 in a row. Michigan makes sense too. They got a returning quarterback. Most of their players are returning. They still got the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line that they just continue to keep pouring out. Sharon Moore, a.k.a. Boomer Sooner alum, is doing it. But Ohio State is interesting to me because I don't believe just because you made the playoffs, you should automatically be ranked in the top 4 because you still got to take in consideration who going to throw the ball. Now, Kyle McCord ain't bad. We just ain't synced him yet. I need to see him produce, and then I can feel confident in him playing because
so
that's actually. Oh man, so
because see, that's why I don't disagree, and I probably worded it wrong. I don't disagree just because you make the playoffs, you get in. But if I look at Bama, who comes in at 4, they have that same question, right? Like, who's going to take over the quarterback spot?
Traditionally, yeah. I would have probably given it to LSU.
I think LSU also. Yeah.
Because they're returning a lot of players, and they're still and the starting quarterback's still there, and they're very talented. And the quarterback's the key one. I would have probably moved LSU up. For a lot of people, unfortunately, I probably would have moved USC up, the Heisman Trophy winners back. I would have moved him up. And then I would have moved Florida State up.
Okay.
I think Clemson.
That's my top 5 right there. I would put Clemson right behind them at 6. Clemson at 6. I would have put Bama, Ohio State right behind the 2, only because of the quarterback questions. And then wrapped it up with Penn State and Washington. That would be my 10.
I got to disagree with you on that one. Like I said, I think that by the end of the year, I think y'all will actually feel what I'm trying to say about LSU. I don't think I don't see it. I think the best team in the if you ask me right now, because I mean, same thing you're saying about Ohio State, the same thing you can say about Georgia. As uberly talented as they are, and I know that we just saw them go out there with Stetson Bennett, and we can talk about walk on this, walk on with that. We haven't seen Carson Beck play. We've seen Carson Beck in the spring game. We've seen Carson Beck in like mop-up duty.
You saw he got that fade.
They have a defense.
Hey, you see that fade though?
You see that fade.
But that's the whole thing. I think Jim knows defense in year 2. I think it's going to be different, and I think that Ohio State is going to be better. I say this right here. I was high on Kyle McCord out of high school, and I'm still high on him now. And I think Kyle McCord is going to do work. I think that he's going to step in, and I think it's going to be a seamless job, just to be honest with you.
I'm high on him too.
I'm not saying that he's better than CJ Stroud, but I'm sitting here and saying
that's my point.
Right here is that
they couldn't do it with CJ Stroud on the best receiving room in the country.
It's a seamless transition. I'm telling you.
Let me put in a disclosure real quick. I hate preseason polls.
Yeah,
I hate any poll that comes in before week 4. I do. But we have to do them because it's for clicks, baby. Yeah. Engagement, debate, argument is only created when you start ranking stuff and everybody wants 100%. To disagree with you. So unfortunately, we gotta do it. And so, real quick, let me finish up real quick. This is the thing. I hate them going up until week 4. But the reason why I'm saying all of the ones that I picked, quarterbacks. Clemson, I will make an argument for Klubnik and them to move up. New OC, especially with a good OC like Garrett Riley, I can make an argument they should probably move up. But outside of that, if it's a new quarterback, I'm probably going to move you down just because I'm still waiting to see what you're going to look like. I hate them before week 4.
I got to see, for me, I say Sunday, September 3rd is going to tell me everything I need to know about two teams, LSU and Florida State. And I'm gonna be real with you. If LSU loses that game and then they drop at least a game, at least one game in the SEC, I think they're done. I think that Bama is the most talented team, and this is not just because I'm friends with Ty. Ty, you my boy, you know that. But
they've recruited number 1 or 2 for 5 years in a row, right?
I think
close to 1 or 2.
I think that when it's all said and done, I think Bama's going to be the best team in the SEC this year. I think that Milroe is going to go crazy. But LSU, I'm just not high on them. If you ask me today, I'm higher on Florida State than I am LSU. I
won't disagree with you there.
And I'm not saying
we're going to have a great video before that Florida State LSU game.
Yes.
We're going to have fun there.
Oh yeah, we got to do a preview of that game. If there's any game that I want to preview week 1, is that one, because I'm gonna hit up my Florida State guy. We've got to talk about that one because, man, that game is gonna be electric. Because I have been quoted saying this, and I will say this again out loud. If there's teams that I feel like the most comfortable going to the playoffs that is not in the typical group of playoff teams, it's LSU and Florida State. I can see both of them winning their conferences.
Yeah. I think though that if you're Florida State, you need to prove that. I mean, they got to prove that, not just that they can beat Clemson, in which they haven't done for 8-9 years or something like that. You got to prove that, and then you also they've been losing to teams like North Carolina State and Wake Forest every other year. Yeah, Louisville. Hey, listen, go out there and freaking win, because look, and I get it that it was Jimbo left that place in shambles. I understand that, and I like Jordan Travis, but he's got to prove that he can be healthy. He hasn't done anything and he hasn't had a healthy full season in his career.
Unfortunate, but true.
Yeah, no, and you're very right on that. The only thing that scares you about Clemson is that what Clemson is going to come out there and do. I think the only thing that scares you about Clemson, I mean, look, that defense, they're going to put guys out there. It's Baby Venables out there, defensive coordinator, doing what he's doing.
Except that they didn't perform that way last year on defense, and I think that may have had a lot to do with
when you're on the field an awful lot, just like our players were. Ukulele was not the answer. The only concern that I have about this Clemson team is, I know the offense that they're going to be running, and we know they're going to be able to put up numbers. But are they going to do that by committee, or are they going to actually have because we all know what Riley's system looks like. Garrett Riley, Lincoln Riley, Riley, Jay Riley. We all know what Riley's
Bobby Riley
looks like. Yeah, we all know what the
Scooter Riley.
Like. Hold on. We all know what the system looks like with a superstar wide receiver or a handful of them. Yeah. Clemson doesn't have that superstar or that guy. We talk about Oklahoma an awful lot, and we don't talk enough about Clemson's wide receiver cast. In my opinion, I don't think that they have an elite guy. So I'm eager to see does that Riley system does it translate? That's all that I want to see. I think it does because it's the ACC, but I'm just wondering, like non-con, competition. I'm not sure they even play in the non-con, but we'll definitely see because hell, they Florida State and Clemson play the 4th game of the season.
You want to know one thing I do love about
They're
this
probably
list,
going to be
though?
playing twice, though. If they, I mean, because they got rid of divisions, right? Sorry, Ty, go ahead.
No. One thing I love about this list is that where Bama comes in, number 4, right? Because I think it's an adequate placement. They are uber talented. I mean, but I can point you to groups in this Bama defense, right? Like the secondary. Very excited about that. The linebacking core battle going on at the inside linebacker position, going to be a ton of fun. But that defensive line is going to be so much fun to watch this year. Justin Eboigbe coming back from injury. Jaheim Otis, I think, is going to be a household name amongst college football fans this year. But I love them at 4 because of something Nick Saban always says. Rat poison. Right? 4 is just far enough down that for Alabama standards, he can be like, oh, you see, you got to prove it. They're just putting you at 4 because you're. So Nick Saban is the master psychologist in college football. That is, I mean, he's a phenomenal coach. He's a phenomenal recruiter. But one of the other things that separates him from his peers is his understanding of psychology. He leverages these sort of things better than anybody. He is going to be preaching rat poison. Mm-hmm. I love that for the Crimson Tide team. I think number 4 is a really good place. It shows, hey, we think you've got a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. We know you've got a lot of talent, but there's some questions we need answered. I think that's fair. I'm perfectly fine with that.
I'll be real with you. The players definitely talk about that stuff. I'll never forget at OSU, I was walking through Gallagher Iba. I was doing a story, and I heard 2 of the players that came back and they said, "Man, if we would have just beat OU, hell, we'd be right there, ready to play for a national championship." But it's like because we lost to OU, and then they dropped the game. And then, we lost early in the year. They were like, oh, man, they talk about this stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely something to be said. But I don't even know. I don't even know if that's a conversation today about rat poison and all the rest of that.
Oh, it's a conversation.
In my opinion, I think it's back to the basics. I think y'all going to go out there. We can't talk enough about what Pete Golding was doing. And don't get me wrong. Pete Golding got you a couple of national championships. But towards the end of his tenure there at Alabama, I would definitely say he left a sour taste.
I would say Bama got a couple national championships with Pete Golding instead of Pete Golding got Bama a couple. But point proven. Like he was a guy that Nick Saban obviously had a lot of faith in. But I understand what you're saying about like getting back to those basics, right? Because that's something I've preached is that getting back to more of a defense that is fast-paced, downhill, aggressive. That's going to be really, really fun. Alpha says Bama is pretty loaded this year. They are going to be a ton of fun. Hank in here using the phrase we coined and talk about all the time. If it's a 3rd down at Alabama, it was 3rd and Golding. Didn't matter if it was 3rd and 1, 3rd and 15, 3rd and Golding. You run a wheel route, done.
And just to keep going on this top 25 before we get out of here. I guess a couple of questions. So for me with OU, Ty, I'll just answer it like this right here. I think the caption is just climb. I think that's the caption. Leave it at that. Go out there and show it. Do it. That's the caption. Hashtag it. All of that. Just climb. But for some of these other teams of interest, I guess a couple of questions for the board is, are we ranking Washington too high at 10? Are we ranking North Carolina too low at 21? And then the third question is, how in the blue hell, I'll keep it PG, Ty, how in the blue hell is Iowa in your top 25? I think 25 is more 25. That number is more points than they scored last season.
Well, it's part of the reason why whenever they were like, it's part of the reason. Look, whenever that story came out about the Iowa players betting, we can get mad about it. We can talk about it. But you know what we have to acknowledge? He bet the under on the Iowa games. That's smart money. That's smart money. Look, you're going to bet on Iowa, bet under. That's smart money.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jay.
you're
That's
spot
hilarious.
on. It's
I love it.
that he did that. Yeah, it's like, wow. You knew
I
that
got
y'all
another
wouldn't score
question.
points.
How in the blue hell is Utah 14 and SC 6 whenever Utah beat them twice last year and they got everybody coming back?
Yeah.
So, and I've said this before, and Utah fans have pushed back because they like their tight end depth. I don't know why Utah's that low. They did lose a piece I really like. I really, really like Dalton Kincaid, their tight end from last year. He was a really talented piece. But every time I say that, Utah fans are quick to point out to me, hey, there's a few more guys you need to watch because we feel very confident. That's a great question, Jason. I don't know that I have an answer for that one, why Utah wouldn't be higher coming off of winning the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Right.
Good one. And they return Cam Rising.
And I think,
they're not the sexy pick or the sexy topic. Go, Jay.
Well, I was gonna say, isn't there some concerns of knee problems with Rising?
He's looked good. He's looked good in camp, though. I mean, from the video that I've seen, he hasn't had a struggle with throwing the ball. I mean, he's not getting hit, obviously.
I mean, it's fair, but the question is he playing? When is he going to start playing? Because I don't think he's playing week 1. If I'm correct,
I think he's playing right away. He's already practicing. Full practice.
I mean, practicing doesn't mean that you're playing. I mean, you're in a controlled environment. They're probably just getting him warm. But if I'm correct, I think the last thing I saw that he may not play week 1, but he'll probably play forward.
The thing about that is, do you need him to play week 1? Well, probably because it's Florida, but it's at home. And I mean, I don't know who their backup is, but the thing I'm looking at is, if there is a question about that, it would be, is he going to be able to come back that quick from it? Because sometimes those kind of injuries will linger for a while. I mean, some people it takes them 1.5 years. Some people it takes them 9 months. It just depends on the guy. If we know anything about him, though, he's tough. This guy is toughness personified, and he's going to be out there playing if his team needs him, right? So
Brent says USC may win one this year, at least play for a national championship. Brent, I wouldn't look. If USC made the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked, but I've said this historically.
You crazy.
I don't think you can be one-sided and win a college football national championship. I just don't. The worst defense we've seen win a national championship in the modern era was that Auburn team, and they came in at around 58 in the nation. And they had Cam Newton. Now, granted to you got Caleb. So you got me on your quarterback, right? Like, you have Superman. He is unbelievable. He may just repeat as the Heisman, and I don't think anybody would have much to say about that, especially if his development continues, because he did develop from his freshman to his sophomore year. And if that continues, he's going to be phenomenal. But the defense is still such a big question for me. I don't question offense. I think if anybody's sitting here questioning USC's offense, they're asking the wrong questions. That offense is going to be phenomenal, spectacular to watch. I don't
think anybody is questioning that, though.
I don't think they are.
That he can scheme it up as good as anybody, and look, Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the country.
I agree.
And we're talking, but here's what I would tell you is that you're talking about a conference. I don't even really see them getting out of it. If you look at the last half of that schedule, starting at the Notre Dame in Colorado, look, they have 1 week off, and that's the Cal game. The rest of them it's murderer's row. They didn't have to play Washington last year. They didn't have to play Oregon last year. These are 2 teams that are playing defense. They got beat twice by Utah last year because they play defense. One thing we know about, hey, look, even Coach Priman, they've got Shador, and all these guys have quarterbacks that are playing pretty well, aside from, I know none of us are big Bo Picks guys, but even he had
Lanning's doing it.
He had a freaking great year, right? He had a great year. But the one thing I can tell you is that look at it week after week after week. They've got tough games. Even the Notre Dame game is not a freaking gimme.
No, Notre Dame's got Sam Hartman.
They've got Hartman.
I mean,
experienced quarterback,
minded head coach as well.
That's
in Freeman. Their defense looks to be better. He has another year under his belt. So, look, don't get me wrong, Brent. I think USC is going to be a very good team. I think they're going to be in playoff contention. But winning a national championship, that's going to be really interesting. And even winning the Pac-12, right? Because Utah is going to be really good. I can't tell you how much I think of Kyle Whittingham. What he's done with that program has been sensational. Part of the reason why I think it's such a good get by the Big 12 getting in Utah, because they have been a really solid team in college football. So Utah is going to be tough to beat.
So 2 days ago, there was the latest update on Cam Rising, and he still hasn't been cleared to practice yet.
Yeah.
So that's a torn ACL at the Rose Bowl.
Some weird video. Then different.
Oh, they're showing him probably throwing the ball, but he just can't actually like get in behind center. So that's the big difference. He's out there probably getting his arm warm and doing stuff. He's rehabbing, and they want him, but they play Florida week 1, and I mean we can clown Billy Napier all we want to. It's gonna be a big game.
They beat Utah last year. I mean, I'll give them that. But they also had
probably
why
Anthony. They're ranked so low too is because of the Cam Rising injury, and then now their backup quarterback's hurt too. So you got 2 quarterbacks down. The question is, what is Utah going to do from there? That's where the struggle comes in.
Go ahead.
This guy, oh no, y'all good. I was just gonna say this Charles Conway guy, first time he's speaking loud. I think it's a big win. If I may just comment on that real quick, I think it's a big win. Great day for Missouri. I'll give him that. Not gonna take away from getting him, but my biggest thing is man, you know, Charles, I see you in the comments, but what have y'all done and what has Luther Burden done? You know, I think the biggest thing, the biggest question for me is that even if y'all do
how to win the season.
Well, yeah, no, not only that, but the thing is Drinkowitz, is he safe?
He's been bull. This is the thing. Burden, he's going to be a dude.
Yeah,
he was up and down his freshman year. He's going to be a dude. It's my biggest question is how will Missouri do this season, which is why I just asked Charles how he thinks the Tigers will do this year, because I don't worry about Luther Burden. He's going to be a monster, man. Everybody wanted him. I'm interested in how Missouri does in the SEC, trying to kind of get back to what they kind of knew when they first got to the SEC, which was those SEC East championship appearances, right? Like that was really big for the program. And Charles makes a great point. We talked about this on the SEC Connect whenever we were going through our season expectations for Missouri. And one of the things I was saying is it's so hard to gauge the Tigers because of the amount of talent they return. So look, big year for Missouri. There is no doubt though, that this is a huge win. I talked about it on the video today. Outside of Dorial Green Beckham, this is now the second highest player ever to commit to Missouri. And if he signs, he will be the second highest rated player to sign with Missouri per 24/7 Sports Composite.
Oh man, that's fun. I love the Missouri fans in here, super excited and saying that everything's changing at Missouri. Hey, I'm glad that y'all got the optimism. Keep that up, because I say that all sincerity. I really want y'all to really support the school. We like when the SEC is good. It's better when all the teams are good. So keep that support. I just hope Drink doesn't get himself in trouble against Middle Tennessee State. I'm serious, because they beat Miami recently last year.
If you lose to a 4-letter acronym team, that's bad.
Exactly.
No,
go ahead, Jay. And outside of that, I mean, PJ and Caden Green were right there last year. Your top 2 guys. We got to remember, it's hard. It's hard out in these streets, man. It's hard.
My biggest thing is that I think that I'm not sure they can keep the commit if Drinks and company don't stay, because it's a lot riding on the season to keep that commit.
I think this bought him more time.
I don't necessarily know. I know that you can call it like whatever. I don't know. Yeah, if they go 4-8 or however.
Well, okay, if they go 4-8,
yeah,
that takes care of itself. But I mean, if they just show that
they're not good, man. I mean, they're just not good.
No, but there's a lot of room between 4 and 8 and not getting fired.
I mean, that's great. You can recruit, but what are you winning? That's the whole thing. Is that it's been a long time since Greg Pinkel was over there on the. I think that's how you say his name. Since he's been on the sideline, it's been a long time since Chase Daniel was running up.
Oh no! Look, I asked the question as soon as he committed. What does Missouri do this year? It's big, but I do think there could be something to the fact that he just got this. He now has something to leverage to the Missouri.
That's true.
People where he's like, hey, if you get rid of me, you now are going up against Georgia and Oklahoma for a Williams Nwaneri, and I won the battle for him for Wingo. Now you don't have me. So that's what I don't disagree with you, though, Jason. If he goes 4-8, look, all that goes out the window because then you have to move on. I'm not saying I think they're going to be a 10-win team. I think that there's some tough games for them, but they just need to be improving, right? Yeah. So, like, as long as they can do that, It's going to be good.
And that's my whole thing with what Charles is saying as far as we're sleeping, you do redo our homework. But here's my problem with it, okay? It's easy for us to sit here and say, well, yeah, y'all played Georgia close last year. We played Florida State close last year in the bowl game. I mean, it kind of is what it is. You got to go out there and
have a winning season. You know, you still have a winning season.
And I mean, that's something that Drinkowitz has not done since he's been there. I'm not saying that he hasn't went to a bowl game or even won a bowl game, but what has he done to make some noise with them outside of getting Luther Burden and now Williams Nwaneri?
RJ Moore Malone comments, what's up, guys? Been a long time. Just checking in on you boys. Keep up the content. RJ, friend of the show. Can't wait to get you back. It's been way too long, my guy. Sorry for my absence. Got married, went on a honeymoon. I think you and I were texting about that. And I'm just now starting to get back into the fold because redid the studio. Charles, here's what I'll say, man. I am super interested and excited for Missouri football this year because you're not wrong. You return a lot of talent. You've had some big recruiting wins, but it still has to come to the field. We need to see what that looks like. It's going to be a ton of fun, but that's why it's a great thing that the college football season is here because now we're in the show me phase. Guys, we're going to go ahead and wind this down because we've been going
shout out real quick.
Go ahead.
We need to shout out Shawty Parker here. He's part of the Fanatic Sports show there. This guy is a former UGA receiver. He's on that show. I had the pleasure of being on there on Saturday night with him. Appreciate you coming in, Shawty.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate you coming in here, spending your time and interacting with the stream. Always great. He says, y'all giving him too much time. Not enough wins for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Hey.
He didn't bring in Missouri. NIL brought him to Missouri. Yeah, look, NIL is a part of college football recruiting now. It is what it is. But with that, guys, let's go around. Tell everybody where they can find all of your great stuff. We'll start with Jay, then to Chris, and then Jason.
Of course, Jay, Unfair Sports. Find your boy there. Got some more content coming down the line. I appreciate you allowing me, as usual, to come through, Ty. It's always a fun argument and discussion. So, yeah, y'all can keep arguing the preseason polls. I'm going to put something up on Wednesday about that.
And we're going to be here to argue about it. Chris, where can the people find your stuff?
Hey, Horns Down Pod on Twitter. You can find me, Chris with a K, Chris with a _K. Find us on YouTube Thursdays, 7 o'clock. We're doing the show. It's back. It's live in full effect. Horns Down Podcast. You already know.
And Jason, my man, where can the people find all your great stuff?
At CFB-pod right here on YouTube or at hofmedia.us on our website. That'll put you pretty much everywhere we are. I am at JW_HOF on Twitter.
Gotcha. Y'all already know we're going to be having a bunch of content coming throughout the week. Thank you all for tuning in. Charles, Missouri fan, thank you for being active in the chat.
Yeah,
awesome win for your Missouri Tigers. Very excited to see what y'all do this year. I'm excited for SEC football. I'm excited for college football.
Yeah. Hey, this is the last Saturday without some football. Next Saturday, we get Vanderbilt in Hawaii. What?
I know. And we'll be talking more about SEC stuff on the SEC Connect. I'm sure. We'll talk about this. Real talk.
The game to watch during week 0 is Navy and Notre Dame. Because I want to see what this Navy attack is going to look like. They kicked I don't want to demonetize, but they kicked Baylor's ass last year, and I want to see how disciplined Notre Dame is going against that attack. So that's the game to watch in week 0. But I'll be watching everything in week 0. It doesn't really matter to me. Hell, we get football. So again. If you really like what you saw on the show today, put Boomer in the chat for Ty. Go ahead, put Boomer.
just that's enough.
Disrespectful, man.
That's just enough out of you. All right, guys. We'll be back on the evening live stream Friday evening, 5:30 Central Standard Time. If you want to see Jay, Chris, and I before then, we're on the SEC Connect Wednesday evening. I'll be on the Bama Standard Final Whistle show with Macadell Dan, Chris James, Justin Riley, and Coach Smook tomorrow evening. Through the Haze. Through the Haze is Wednesday afternoon and Friday afternoon. And then, like I said, the stream will be back Friday evening, throwing me off my game with that damn Auburn helmet. With that, we're going to get out of here. Hit the like button. We'll see y'all next time. That's it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And now we just spinning wheel out.